You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. This is a short week at B&H, and for today's episode, we'd like to take care of a bit of spring cleaning. We will be announcing the winners of our Sandisk memory card sweepstakes. We also plan on talking a bit about our new B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group, which has been quickly gathering steam. From there, we're going to go around the room and catch up with how we're all doing with our New Year's photo resolutions and see if we are actually following through with them. In the second half of today's show, we're going to present segments from an inspiring conversation we had at the Depth of Field conference with photographer Tomaiya Colvin, followed by a high-octane chat with photographer Toni Gail. Before we move on, a huge thanks to all who joined the podcast group. The response has been awesome, and we want to grow this group. Thanks so much to those who have actually submitted photographs, comments, and suggestions. We actually read them. Just today, we had members from France, Canada, Italy, Taiwan, and Iowa join the group, and we had a school principal, a shop owner, and an art teacher. I was the school principal. I lied.
Yeah.
Got to pump the
Yeah,
numbers
you
a
wish.
bit. But first, let's get down to business. We have two winners of the Sandisk 64 gigabyte Extreme Pro SD XC memory cards, and they are. We have a drum roll here for this one. Okay.
Man,
First card goes to Nicholas Giles, and the second card goes to Kayla Waldrop. Congrats, guys. Okay, we're going to be getting those cards off to you in due time, and we want a full report of every picture you put on those cards. Thank you so much for joining the Facebook group, and we will be getting in touch soon. And thanks to everyone who entered. We're going to be doing future giveaways through the group, so stay active and encourage all of your family members and friends who aren't already subscribers to our podcast to head on over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever, and subscribe. And if you're already a subscriber and haven't taken the time to leave a rating and review on Apple, do so. It means a lot to us, and the feedback ultimately benefits all of us. Okay, let's talk a bit about the Facebook group. Some great photos uploaded and funny GIFs, and some great suggestions for an episode on the update of Norman Rockwell's Four Freedoms by artist Hank Willis Thomas.
Yeah, I got that. That was a comment that came in yesterday, and it was kind of funny because we are trying to organize something with that. And so whoever, I forget exactly who sent it in, but they were kind of reading my mind. So,
no, it's kind of cool that our listeners are on the same wavelength as we are. I mean, it's
yeah,
good.
totally. Yeah. And well, keep your eyes out for that. We'll see if it happens. And I just wanted to mention a couple of people that who've been great so far with the Facebook group, and say thank you to everybody because it's been really overwhelming. I mean, this was an initiative started by Jason, and it's been great so far. And I hope that it grows and it kind of gives us our chance to talk to people. I think we all have a couple people we want to mention, and I'm just going to throw out Carolina Zoomerin, who has been posting some really nice atmospheric landscapes. So thank you for that, Carolina. Carolina. All right.
Carolina.
Unless she wants to call it Carolina.
All right.
Actually, I had her. I actually pulled her also. She has some really. There was some nice photographs of flowers that I'd seen with some very, very selective focus and nice lighting and stuff.
Right.
I also like Mike Raposa's telephoto shots. He has he goes around with a Sigma 150 to 600. I've hauled one of those. It's fun. But there's one shot in particular we got of a gull flying in front of a distant tanker out over the water, and it's a pretty strong shot.
Cool. Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Jason, anybody stands out?
The person that I was thinking of is Eric Kaltenmark. He does like emergency services photos, and I thought it was really cool subject matter, some cool compositions in there. I don't know, just kind of a different thing to go out and shoot.
All right.
You know, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Great. Yeah, it's been great so far, and again, just want to keep encouraging people to chime in. So the main aspect of this half of the show anyway, though, is to kind of catch up with some of the resolutions that the three of us spoke about in the first week of 2019. Yeah, I know, but I had to. Huh? I mean, time flies. It's already almost April. We're 3.5 months in, and
the crocus are coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's getting nice here in New York. So I wanted to kind of go around the table here and see how people are doing with with their intentions. And if you don't remember
Why do I
yours,
feel this is like a surprise quiz in school?
there's going to be a surprise at the
You
end.
didn't
yeah.
warn us. This is not fair.
It's all right.
I would have done more stuff last night to say I did it.
So just to kind of look back on some of the things we spoke about back in January, Jason was talking about continuing his long exposure work with urban cityscapes and working with some long lenses. Alan wanted to get back and dig into some of his old film archives to digitize long hidden gems. He was going to use his Frankenscanner that that he created, actually. And I was talking about getting back to some street photography and going through some images that I shot 20 years ago to see if I can put that project together. So how are we doing, Alan?
Okay, well, all right. I actually did manage to scan, I'm going to say 4 to 5 new transparencies.
Wow, 4 to 5, eh?
Yeah, I did get a little bit bogged down. I've had other things going on, but however, I also did manage to reconfigure my Franken scanner to do medium format as well. And I'm very
that's pretty
surprised.
cool.
I was getting, because I'm shooting again with an old Hasselblad system, and I've been getting some amazing negatives using my Sony with that contrast, a little bit reconfigured, no
So
bellows.
photos that you're taking right now, new photos.
I'm shooting film and I'm photographing the negatives with the Sony and flipping them around and getting amazing stuff.
You did do some old stuff with the Sharp Bokeh project, right? You had that one photo with the tractor out in the middle.
Oh,
of the field.
yeah.
Is that
That was a scan.
that was a scan? Okay,
Sure, yeah.
That came out real nice.
Yeah. Oh, a lot. Some of them are beautiful.
Yeah.
Honestly, just to give you an idea of comparison, anybody out there who's used scanners, prior to this, I was using a Nikon Coolscan 4000, which is a very good unit. They haven't made them for a million years. You can't get them anymore. This one is better. I'm actually getting like 100+ meg files, and even by photographing medium format negatives and squaring them off to 1:1 aspect ratios, the files are still like 70 megs, and there's a ton of detail. I'm shooting raw, and I'm really able to pump a lot of detail out of these things. So it's been a great process. I'm still working on it.
Cool. And what else have you been working on that kind of got in the way of fulfilling your resolution? I know you always keep them busy, so.
I'm kind of like...
Any articles, any lenses reviews?
Actually, I'm in the midst of doing the new Sigma 40mm f1.4 art lens.
Okay.
And it's pretty impressive. It's 2.6 pounds, and it's 5 times the size of a Nikon 50mm 1.4. I'm looking at the size of this thing. It's like a quart of milk. And I'm shooting it on a new Canon EOS R. It's the first time I've used the camera, and I like it.
That's great.
A new mirrorless, and it's
Mirrorless.
my first experience with it, and it's a very, very nice camera. Again, I've been using Sony for the past 3 generations of A7 series cameras, and this one's nice. I like the smooth edges. I never like the sharp edges on the Sony. It kind of looks cool, but in the hand, I don't like it. Yeah. And so far, the image quality is nice. The performance is nice, and I'm only 1 day in with it, but it's fun.
And again, what camera is it?
That's the Canon EOS R, their new mirrorless camera.
And then they came out with the RP
Yes.
after that, which is the more of a consumer level.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're caught up with those,
good stuff. So it's a new lens and a few other little goodies I've been working on. We're pretty busy.
Okay. All right, Jason, I know that you were doing some great work with the long lenses, cityscapes, but then all of a sudden there was like a direct or a right turn and you're trying some new stuff.
He's been doing, since he said he's doing this long exposure thing, his camera's been on bulb.
Yeah.
With 5 neutral density filters. He's basically he's recording the entire season in one frame.
That's great. I've seen a photographer do something like that.
It's been done.
I'm using 10 billion stops of ND. And I'm just letting it go the whole winter.
That'd be great. Yeah.
No,
but seriously, kind of walk us through because I want to hear what you're up to.
Yeah, I've been. I did do some of that stuff. I actually borrowed your lens and took a couple pictures that I was kind of.
He's been wondering what happened.
I've been wondering where it's been.
No, I gave it back to you. Your 70. I adapted that 70 to 200 Nikon to the Sony. So I did do a little bit with that, but I don't know. I just got into taking pictures of people like on a. I don't know. So I've been taking nothing but portraits for like the last since we started.
How long are the exposures?
Some of them are longer than usual.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm not. Seriously, I don't know. Some of them are kind of long exposures. But,
Well, it seemed to be kind of an organic
it is kind of
switch
organic.
because you're working in a studio out in Brooklyn and you're doing cityscapes from the studio, and then it seemed like you started to turn the lens onto the people in the studio.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean,
But it's interesting stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. I have a guy out in Brooklyn, a good friend of mine. He's building this like really crazy recording studio in his apartment that has this amazing view. I've talked about that on the past podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know, but it looked really like the inside is as cool as what you can see outside. So I don't know. I've just been kind of taking pictures of the people that come in there.
Okay, so sounds like we're kind of failing on our New Year's resolutions.
No, as a matter of fact, no, it's not. It's an interesting thing, okay?
Yeah.
And these are things that we're
These
doing
are the
for
2020
ourselves.
resolutions?
These
Okay.
are,
You're getting ahead of
and
it
the
again.
year's not over either. Nor is the winter.
Right.
It's still winter. I said
Right,
during
right.
the winter,
Right.
okay?
I mean,
But as far as
for creative endeavors, you got to move. You got to go with the flow, right? You got
That's
to you got to go where your inspiration takes you, right?
And that's exactly what you did. What you're doing is, okay, so you're photographing for yourself. We have a certain... what's the word for it? There's something cool about photographing for yourself as opposed to doing it for assignment. Because assignment, you have to fulfill a job that you have parameters. Whereas if you're taking pictures for yourself out of love and joy of just taking pictures, you go with the flow.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that you've been shooting out the window and all of a sudden you turn around and realize, hey, it's kind of nice in here too, and you just turn the camera inward, that's fine. It's the same process. It's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, and from the work that I've seen of Jason's, and it's not like you just turning around and snapping some photos of your friends. You have an idea and you've been working on it. You've been digging through in it. You've been trying new things, and the portrait work, if you want to call it that, has been really interesting. And it's kind of incorporating some of the ideas you were using with your long exposure cityscape,
Yeah, definitely.
But let me jump over here a little bit, because we also at that time talked about gear and some lenses and tripods and other things that we might be considering buying to help us fulfill these resolutions. You were talking about the Sony FE 100 to 400 f4 lens.
Yeah, I'm not getting that.
Okay, so scratch that off the list.
But I do have new picks.
All right, what's one?
The two lenses that I'm looking at now are more portrait lenses. It's the 85 1.4, the G Master for Sony, and the 50 1.4, and that's a Zeiss lens. So I'm using the 24 to 70 to kind of feel out which focal length I want to commit to.
Right.
But I definitely want more shallow depth of field than what I'm working with now with the 2.8. So yep,
cool. Yep. So my thing was to get back to street photography, which I think I have actually.
You're walking your cameras around your neck.
Yeah,
you always walk out with it.
I've made strides. The other part of my New Year's resolution was to dig out all the negatives I shot in 1999 on this series I did of a small town, a documentary about a small town, and just reapproach them, start to edit it, and see if I can make something out of it. That I haven't done.
Was that the Garzone?
Oh, but you
project?
made fun of me, huh?
Yeah, I totally did.
What town?
No, this was in upstate New York. It's it's an area in Shenango County. If anyone knows of Shenango County, let me know. That'd be great to hear from you. So that's a project that I think is going to have to get put off for a few months anyway, and hopefully I will dig into it. But I do want to say, regarding the street photography, I was waiting, and this is back in January, to get my hands on either the Fujifilm X100F
or the Ricoh
or the Ricoh GR3 that was coming out. Well, I did get my hands on the Fujifilm X100F thanks to the folks at Fuji. They let me play with a model for a week. Mm-hmm. And then the Ricoh came out, and the price was much more expensive, much more than I thought it was going to be. So I decided I was going to go in a whole other direction, and now I'm going to go back to the Canon G series, which is what happened was, in order to pay for those two cameras I was going to buy, I dug out a whole bunch of old gear and sold it.
Yeah, you sold a lot of stuff.
I sold old DSLRs. I sold some lenses.
Your son's bike?
I sold my son's bike, and I had enough money to buy the camera. And one of the things I didn't sell that I pulled out of the closet was a GR9. No, not a G. I'm sorry. A Canon G9, which is what I shot back in the day. And I've been using it, and it's been great. And it kind of reminded me how much I like that G series. So my next camera, I think, is going to be the G5X. I'm gonna scrap the idea of the Fujifilm and the Ricoh, save a little money, and stick with the street photography through the Canon. So that's kind of been the big news for me in that sense.
So does that series still have that flip up screen?
It does.
Okay, so
and that's one of the main reasons. I realized how much I like having that screen that flips up, so I can kind of hold it at waist level and look down when I'm making my shots.
Taking photos on the sly.
On the sly, exactly. So that's where I'm at. And now comes, I don't know. But anyway, so let's hear from you guys. I mean, that's another reason why we have the Facebook group. We want to hear what people expect to do this year, what they'd like to do, and how that's coming, because projects aren't, it's saying them and doing them are different things. So let's
I think it's
effort.
important to have some kind of a project going on, just for a reason to pick up the cameras. Some people don't need. Some people just pick up the camera and go for a walk and find things that they want to take pictures of, just spontaneity. And other people need to have some kind of a structured thing, so figure out what makes you tick. And again, don't let your camera sit there gathering dust.
Yeah, use it. All right, and speaking of which, this is the part that I didn't mention to Alan and Jason. We're gonna start a challenge. And the first person that's going to be challenged is Jason.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
he won't help you. But
he's on a different assignment right now.
He's busy.
Okay.
So,
what is it?
Well, I'm basically gonna suggest, and of course, you have to agree to it, that you post some photos on the Facebook group page of what you're working on now.
Sure.
I was gonna say do some of the cityscapes, the long exposure cityscapes, which I think are awesome, and I think the people will see them, they'll really react. But if you want to post some of the portraits you're working on, do it. So I think that, how about 3 photos?
Okay.
Within a week.
Yeah, and
is that fair?
I can do like, do they all have to be the same genre? Can I do portraits and cityscapes?
How about,
can I do like two cityscapes and a portrait?
That's perfect. That's what I was going to say.
Like that,
what you've been working on and what's coming up next.
Okay. Yeah.
And post those, and let's hear some responses. And of course, Alan and I will make up fake names and trash the photos. But
yeah.
Also, remember, this is a short week, so capture smaller files.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay?
Yeah,
you want to be able to fit it in.
No, I love getting critique on my photos, so that I am 100% down.
And then perhaps we'll use that as a way for some of our listeners and people who are in the Facebook group to put up their photos that are along that same vein. So we'll have Jason start the challenge and have people throw up their cityscapes.
Okay.
I mean,
that sounds.
Let's try to make them along the style that Jason's working on, long exposure, cityscapes.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go.
Okay, that works.
Cityscape week.
Yeah, like that.
Right.
And then you guys can
copyright that as soon as the show's over.
You can throw it back to me, and we'll throw it to Alan, and we'll each do a little challenge.
Week.
All right?
Yeah,
something like that.
And we, Alan's got a kind of his own genre. Alan Photo Week.
Yeah.
I don't know what genre do you shoot?
I never thought about that.
call
I
him-
don't know.
Yeah,
Urban squares and shadows.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's definitely in the urban realm.
I call it modern miscellaneous.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's probably
No, postmodern miscellaneous.
Well, you've shot a lot of different types of stuff. I mean,
So, Jason, do you accept the challenge?
I accept.
All right.
Okay, we're going to take a short break for local traffic and weather, and when we come back, some bits and pieces from Depth of Field.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BH Photo Video, #BH Photo Podcast.
Okay, we are back, and here is a snippet of a conversation we had back at the Depth of Field 2019 with portrait photographer Tomaiya Colvin. All right, yes, we're having fun here today. We are back at the 2019 Depth of Field Convention, and we're being joined by Tomaiya Colvin, a Houston-based photographer, and you do high school portraits. But I had a funny thing happen. I was talking to a photographer who said he photographed seniors. I didn't get the high school part. I thought he photographed old people. I went out to nursing homes.
That actually would be a great idea.
That
No?
is. It's
Yeah,
the
we
opposite
just
end of the
photo- yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
They would love it, too. Yeah. No?
So you talk a lot about cleaning up one's act and acting on what makes you happy. In other words, if something makes you happy, that's what you should be concentrating on.
Correct.
All right. Now, you did say one thing that kind of caught my attention. You say, go through your Facebook page, go through your Instagram, get everything out of it that you don't want to do or that doesn't make you happy, because if people see you posting that, they're going to call you to do that, and then you're stuck with more misery.
Yes.
Now, the one exception was, you said, of course, don't clear it out if it makes you money. Now, where do we draw the line between that happiness and making money?
Well,
You're on with me, okay.
So I'm very fortunate right now that I get to do what makes me money.
Okay.
It hasn't always been that way. And so I'm speaking from a place of 5 years in now, where I get to say that high school senior photography makes me money. There was a time where, I had to post and do things, obviously, like I said, to pay the bills, to take care of the kids. And that's a real life situation. But I think all of us are in different places in our lives, and our happiness is going to look different. And so will there be times if it was a slow month and I need to photograph a wedding to make sure that those braces get paid for? Absolutely, I will. Because that's real life.
So you basically control the floodgate based on how much rain we got going on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, if I don't have on rain boots and I have on sandals, then I'm good. But I'm just being honest. But if it comes to the point where it's getting tight, then I'm going to do what I have to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
That's
and I think that's the part with the photography industry. People aren't authentic anymore, and people put out this facade of what fake life really looks like. And in real life, we have to pay our bills, and we have to do what it takes to sustain our households. And that sometimes that may be taking the odd jobs, or getting a part-time job, or doing different things. But the end goal is to make sure that you're happy holistically.
Can we talk high school senior portraiture? Because that's something we never spoke about on this show before. And to me, it's pretty interesting. And I know that, it's changed a lot since when I did it, I imagine. So are you doing it mostly in studio, outside, a combination of everything? Or what's the popular trend right now?
So I honestly don't photograph in studio at all. None. And that's more of my personality style. I like to go out and really have play dates and really go out and just explore.
I get the impression you like going and playing.
Yeah, I like going and playing. And I feel like a studio for me just really kind of puts me into, what are we going to do? Like, I've done this already. So in my area, most of the kids enjoy outdoor nature photos. There are times when we do, if I have a special project or something that I want to do in studio, then I will. But for the most part, they want something different. They want whatever is most popular at the moment.
And what are some of the things that you tend to take? Do you have your go-to spots? And do you break it down by types of kids and et cetera, et cetera?
So it really... Honestly, like all of them are different.
Yeah.
So like the one, I think like 2 weeks ago, like she wanted to go to a graffiti wall because she's going to school for art. So she really wanted to, like, obviously, full of life, full of color, because that's her thing. She draws and she's going to school for that. Well, you have a guy who's into fashion and he wants to go in an alley and wear some cool clothes or go on a rooftop. So, those are two completely different extremes almost. And then you have a kid who's in FFA into farming, and he wants the photo session at the farm. So, it literally can go or be anywhere.
And do you have like a meeting with them, or you email with them and you say, hey, what are you guys into? What's your thing? And
so
then you figure it out.
There's a lot of time involved, because the average high school has how many seniors right now? Just on average.
In my area, probably about 700.
700 now.
Per school.
You
Per
have
school.
everyone has to have their individual portrait.
Right.
That takes a lot of time.
So the individual portraits are handled by a studio in our area.
Okay.
The ones that are in the book, those ones, yeah.
That's taken at a portrait studio. So they're like, the school districts have a contract.
Yes.
With that photographer, and they go. Everybody in the school gets their photo taken by that
The
photographer.
mug shots.
And then we go do something completely different.
Right.
Yeah, because most of the kids, they don't like that picture anyway.
Right. And that's what they hand out to their friends, and that's what they pass around
Yeah,
or
so
send
the
to the
photos
grandma.
that I
stuff
take
like
are
that,
the ones that they pass out to their friends.
So how much time on average would you give to each student? Because they say, here's what I want to do, here's where I want to go. You can't give them 2 days to play. So what's your average block of time?
So It's normally somewhere between like 2 to 3 hours.
Really?
And how many would you say out of a senior class of 700 would want this kind of photo done?
At least probably 20% or so.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And what about jocks? What do they like to come with their uniforms on sometime, and the cheerleaders and all that kind of stuff?
They
the whole
come
thing?
in the band. They come with their instruments.
And
so, it just depends on what they're into, literally. So sometimes, like, we'll start at, like, one girl, she was into baseball. So we did one outfit in her cute, sundress and that type of thing, and then at the end of the session, she put on her entire baseball outfit, and we were out on the field.
And do you have like a stylist with you, or makeup and hair, or they bring their own?
So
how's that work usually?
They normally will get their own hair and makeup done. And I can't actually, in Texas, you don't have to have a license to like touch up makeup. And so I can just do a little touch up if need be. And then we just keep going. So normally with the girls, sometimes they bring too many outfits. Yeah. But the guys,
not too many.
You guys don't have too many outfits.
You got to fix the collars and the whole thing. Yeah.
Sometimes with them, it's kind of like, I have.
And did this
30
business
minutes.
kind of grow out of something you didn't expect, or was it what kind of your goal?
How'd you fall into this one? How'd you fall into it?
I was a high school and middle school teacher.
Oh,
perfect.
Okay.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Now, when did you start taking photographs?
6 years ago.
So this is really new in your
Yeah.
life, relatively speaking.
What are you shooting with?
A Sony
Okay.
A7R2.
That's what I got. All right, so if people want to catch up on more of your work and see what you do and get an idea of what we've been talking about, where should they go?
So they can go on Instagram, Tomaiya Colvin, and then on...
And they spell that, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I better do that. So it's Tomaiya, C like Charlie, OLV like Victor, IN.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's well worth a visit for sure. Again, I heard a good chunk of your talk earlier today, and you had people listening and nodding their heads, and you really had the audience in your hand. You did a good job there. Wonderful
Thank you.
speak to you. And again, just thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tomaiya. And here's a bit of a chat we had with photographer Toni Gail. Okay, we are back, and again, we are at the 2019 Depth of Field Wedding, Portrait, and Event Photography Conference here in New York City, and sponsored by B&H Photo. We are now joined by Toni Gail, a world-famous portrait photographer. How many years have you been taking portraits now? You've been around for a while. You've been doing this for a good time.
Quite a while. I started photo assisting in 1997.
Okay.
So I haven't had a non-photo job since 1997. So that's a while. It makes me feel very old.
It goes by fast, trust me.
Yeah.
So as for portraiture, how do you keep yourself fresh shooting essentially the same thing constantly?
See, I don't really think of it as the same thing. I mean, some of it is. If you're doing standard, like, corporate headshots, that's kind of the same thing because it has to be. But for the most part, I'm photographing a different person every time. So that alone makes it interesting. Part of what's great about portraiture is I get to meet new people. I get to go new places. I get exposed to new things. And that's always interesting.
Right.
Even if it's I need to do a portrait in an office, I'm walking in, it's a new office. I'm figuring out where to shoot. Maybe, this place looks cool. You've got this great conference room. I've never seen it quite like this. Or you've got this view, or you've got this amazing hallway. Sometimes it's, okay, we have you in this 6x9 conference room with a table that's 5x7. Will this work? Well, if it has to.
And in cases
I had a
like
teacher who said that once you know what your limitations are, everything else is possible. That's what that's about. John.
And I'm saying, in cases like that, when you're just showing up at a location, a corporate space or whatnot, how much time and how much energy do you spend looking around to find a place or a better place to shoot, let's say, and how much comparatively would you spend kind of getting to know the person you're going to shoot?
It all depends on the situation. There are times where I might be hired to shoot 15 people in a day,
right.
And they're scheduled every, say, 20 minutes. So I have very little time to get to know them. I'll talk to them while I'm shooting. We'll have a conversation. I'll ask them how their weekend was, to try and put them at ease, because it's going to be a better photograph if they're comfortable. There are some people that disagree, but
Chris Buck.
there are people. Avedon really made people uncomfortable sometimes, and got some great pictures.
Of course, yeah.
But that's not me.
Yeah. And you want to get called back by that company eventually.
Yeah, I want to get called back, and I want to capture the essence of who I think that person is when they're being themselves.
Right.
And the best way to do that is to put them at ease.
Yeah.
So you are a Sony artisan, which, if I'm not mistaken, means that they send you all the parts of the camera, you hand assemble them to your own specs, correct?
Well, it's more that we build other people's cameras. You get the grinder and the buffer, and you polish everything.
So obviously, it's not what it's about. So did you start off with Sony mirrorless, or did you go to their DSLRs? At what point did you start working with them?
I started shooting Sony in 2011.
Okay.
The first camera I had from Sony was the A850, which was a DSLR.
Right, okay.
Then I went to the A99.
Which is still, that's the...
Yeah, it's the SLT. So it has a mirror, but it's a fixed mirror.
Gotcha, yes.
And then when the A7R came out, I bought one, and I really liked it, but it didn't replace the A99 because the A99 was a faster camera.
Yes.
But then when the R2 came out, that was it. Like the A99, actually a friend of mine has been borrowing it for the last 7 months, my A99.
And he doesn't even ask anymore, do you need it back, right?
No, I kept saying, you know what, when I need it, I'll let you know.
There you go.
It'll probably be never. It's a great camera. And I still, the 2470 for the A-mount 2470 is a beautiful lens. The 85-1.4, beautiful lens. But the A7R III that I shoot now is such an incredible camera that's all I want to use.
Now, I'm currently using an A7R II. I didn't have the need to go to the 3 yet, okay? Although it is, I noticed the difference between the two of them. How has it affected your portraiture? Does it working with a mirrorless camera as opposed to a DSLR or one of the Sony A cameras?
There are things about the features of the Sony cameras, the eye autofocus in particular.
Yeah.
Especially that it will do eye autofocus in continuous, where I can shoot really shallow and get 95% of my shots
That's
sharp.
a high percentage.
Yeah, I could never do that with anything else. In the past, if you want to shoot at 1.4 or 1.8 or even 2.8, if you're lucky, a third of your shots are sharp on the eyes and the other's the nose or the ear. Mm-hmm. And it's always the best shot. The nose is sharp and the eyes aren't.
Yeah. And that one hair is always real, just crystal clear.
Right.
Yes.
But with the eye autofocus and continuous, I can just keep it activated. If I drift a little or my subject drifts a little, it just tracks with them. And so it nails focus. Nothing's 100%, but almost always.
I'll take 95%.
Yeah.
I'll even 90. That's because I've been playing around with an f1.2 lens lately, and it's not easy.
Yeah,
when it works,
so
it's
shallow.
amazing. But yeah, if you have an option like that where it'll just lock
And
it
do
for
you
you.
use the LCD when you're composing now with that, or are you still using the viewfinder?
It depends on how I'm shooting. If I'm on a tripod, which sometimes for corporate portraits, headshots I am, just so things are consistent. If I'm on a tripod, I'll almost always use the LCD. If I'm outside, I'm almost always using the viewfinder. And if I'm not using a tripod, it could go either way, depending. Like sometimes because the screen tilts, I'll get weird angles, and then I'm using the screen, almost like a waist level finder sometimes.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. Yeah.
But if I'm shooting normally, it's probably through the viewfinder.
Right. So can I jump back quick to the portrait work? Can you kind of break down, what your portrait work is? Primarily, is it corporate work? Is it, magazine work, editorial? And how do you balance it?
It's some corporate, some editorial, some advertising. And some of it is balanced by who calls. So 1 month it might be almost all corporate. 1 week it could be, or 1 month it could be largely advertising.
Which do you enjoy doing the most out of all the types of portraiture you do? Because you do a wide range of it. Which one do you go out saying, I know I'm going to have a good time today? This would be more fun, generally speaking?
Honestly, most of them are fun because it's all shades of the same thing.
Okay.
Editorial has the most flexibility.
Yeah. That's one of the things about low-paying jobs. You have more leeway.
Right. Editorial is also where I'm more likely to be able to relicense the pictures.
Yeah, right.
I just licensed some pictures to the person I photographed for a magazine this fall. Last week, I had another magazine reach out for somebody I photographed last spring. that tends to happen with editorial. It doesn't really with corporate and with advertising.
And in terms of because we were talking earlier about making your the sitter comfortable. When you're doing corporate work, there's an expectation, and I guess, that people to look corporate, look good, look intelligent, and also nice and happy. So, how do you, with editorial, you don't feel that as much in some senses? Maybe you can dig a little deeper.
Yeah, editorial, I usually have a lot more time with the person.
Yeah.
If it's a corporate headshot and I'm just photographing one person, I might have an hour or two, but usually it's at best half an hour.
Right.
They don't have an hour for most of these people. That's a crazy amount of time. They don't have it.
Yeah, they don't have the time.
Yeah. Right.
And so, there is a limit to what I can do. With editorial, I can have a conversation more with the person.
It's often more of a story, quite often as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to spend more time on it.
Yeah, there will be multiple, like that photo for Poets and Writers that we shot a cover, we shot a contents page, we shot a spread for the article, and then, so it's a lot of shots. And so you are able to do more range, which is fun. It's nice to be able to not just put you on a white background. Here's the light. It has to be the same for the next 10 people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Any day you're taking pictures is a good day, and any day you're paid to take pictures is a great day.
Lovely day.
So, and you're kind of known as a lighting expert. Can you talk a little bit about what you're using and anything new that you're trying to incorporate into your lighting?
So it depends on what the shoot is.
Sure.
Sometimes it's speed lights, and then I use the Sony speed lights.
Oh, okay.
Especially now that they have the radio controlled ones,
Yeah.
which are amazing. The HVL F60 RM, which I know is a mouthful, is a great light. If I'm not using speed lights, so if it's a corporate assignment, I'm bringing bigger strobes. And there, it just depends on the shoot what I use. I have a bunch of Bowens. I have some Ellanchrome. I have a little bit of Broncolor. And it just depends on the shoot what I'll bring.
There are tools.
Yeah, there is some modifiers. So I'm also a Manfrotto ambassador.
Okay.
And so I use a lot of Lastolite stuff. And Lastolite just came out with this really cool strip bank that's like 1x5, and it just sort of collapses on itself. Like you don't have to put it on a speed ring. It's all integrated, and because of the design, it's narrower. And so it's really a cool strip bank.
And is LED, I'm assuming?
I do also use LEDs, yeah.
Okay. But is the strip light LED?
Oh, no, that's a strobe strip light.
It's strobe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Interesting.
I do use LEDs, but primarily if I'm doing a video project or if I'm doing something where it's stills and a little video, then I'll light it with LEDs because I don't want to light it twice. Strobes, it's nice to have the versatility both in the modifiers. Like if you put an LED in a 7-foot umbrella, you've lost a lot of light.
Sure, yeah.
With strobe, I can just crank it up.
True. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So can you talk a little bit about the Madam Mayor project that we saw? Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. Yeah,
well,
tell us.
Thank you. So that actually was a project that I thought about for years and I couldn't figure out how to make happen. And then I realized I was an idiot, and I just talked to a magazine I shoot for and said, you guys are women focused and you have this power women issue. What do you think of this? And they're like, oh, that sounds great.
Great idea.
I'm like, I don't know why it took me 2 years to think of that.
Right. And I'll just fill you. What I'm assuming it is women mayors around the country, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And can you speak to where you went and who you shot and kind of the process a little bit? Yeah.
This year I photographed Lovely Warren, who is the mayor of Rochester, and Betsy Price, who's the mayor of Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth, Texas is the largest city with a woman mayor in the country.
Okay.
I've also photographed, I'm trying to remember all the names. I feel terrible when I can't remember people's names. But the mayor of D.C., mayor of Baltimore, the mayor of Islip on Long Island, which for those of us who are local, we think of Islip as tiny. But Islip is actually this massive, all those little towns on Long Island are actually part of Islip.
Right.
I just didn't realize that. I assumed they were all towns, and they're not. They're all part of this.
But is it an ongoing project, or did you capture it with this issue, this magazine? Or?
So we did it first for the fall issue in 2017, and then we revisited it slightly different for fall 2018, and hopefully we'll do it again for fall 2019.
I imagine there'll be more gains in upcoming years.
I would think, I
Probably a lot
suspect
more
that there
so.
will be more options.
You
Yeah,
know, my guess is in 10 years, a unique assignment will be finding 10 male mayors.
that could be.
You
Yeah.
know, so I've got that. Don't start on one, Tony. Okay,
All
that
right.
one's mine.
It's your project.
You do the women. I'll catch up afterwards.
do you
Okay,
do
we'll ping pong.
Do you
Fair
do the
enough.
research? Do you find
did,
out who
yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
shoot and everything and talk to them?
Yeah, I
Okay,
did the research.
yeah.
I mean, I didn't reach out to them because, frankly, if some random photographer,
Right.
I could say I'm a Sony artist and they're not going to know what that means.
Right. Right.
Reaches out, they're not going to have time.
Yeah.
If a magazine reaches out,
Little different
they'll
story.
make the time.
Yeah.
Press time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although times when these projects coalesce and you get several shots under your belt, you say, "This is the project I'm doing. I want to profile." You know, sometimes people take interest in that. Just on the
Once you
basis
get
of the
drop in,
project,
I've already
you know.
photographed, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
All of a sudden they go, okay, I want to be on the boat.
I do think if we get another year out of it, there might be enough that if I could find somebody who was interested in making it a book project, for example, that at that point I could reach out because there would be the critical mass.
So what's next? What do you? Any interesting projects coming up? Assignments? Anything you're going to try in 2019?
I do have a project, a personal project that I did for a few years that I'm trying to restart, which is Interesting People.
Put that on your website, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So someinterestingpeople.com is the URL for that project.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it's just finding people that anyone finds interesting for any reason. So either of you, the three of you, you could say, you know, David Bromer's interesting.
Right.
I'll tell you why.
Right.
Or not.
Right.
Up to you. But and you just say a few sentences about why someone is interesting. I photograph them and put it with what you wrote.
Oh, okay.
Because to me, it's a lot more interesting if it's not who does Toni Gail find interesting. It's who does anyone in the world find interesting. Everybody knows interesting people.
Sure.
And you only have to write a couple of sentences. It's
Right.
not,
Yeah. Well,
some
that's a
people
good
have
idea.
written like 4 paragraphs, but
Well, I wanted to maybe wrap up by jumping back to what Alan asked at the beginning, ways to stay fresh. And I noticed on your website you have some landscape work too that you've done, and so it's not just portraiture. Do you like to get out in the field and shoot too? Does that kind of clean the palette? And when you
yeah,
get back
absolutely.
to the portraiture later?
yeah, I mean, who doesn't like shooting landscapes? Who doesn't like going beautiful places and
Right.
taking pictures of beautiful things? It's also with the landscapes, it allows me, it sells a little bit in stock. And so it allows me to justify traveling. I've been to all 50 states in part because of that. And it's just a fun thing.
Tony, anybody wants to catch up on your work, where should they go?
Instagram is Toni Gail Photo. My website is tonigail.com.
And it's Gale.
Like the wind.
Like the winds. Tony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay, thank you very, very much to all of the new members of the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group, which has been quickly gathering steam. And also another congrats to Nicholas Gills and Kayla Waldrop, our winners of the Sandisk 64 gigabyte Extreme Pro SDXC memory cards. And remember, we want to see all the pictures you take. And moving forward, keep your eyes open for Jason's photographs on our Facebook page, and be kind to him, okay? Don't rip him too hard.
Be mean. I like mean.
Yeah, he likes me. And also use that, listeners, use that as an opportunity to post your photos that maybe follow the same theme or have some kind of conversation photographically with those photos. If you want to, as Jason's going to do, post a couple of photos of stuff he's been working on and something that he wants to start working on. We'd like that idea of seeing where you're going to go with your stuff.
We want to see where you've been, and we want to see where you're going.
Exactly.
Along with all that, next week we have a terrific episode coming up with Ben Zank and Mitra Sabori. It should be an interesting
it was
show.
one of the most interesting ones we've done, for sure.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And again, thank you again for all of the encouragement you've been giving, the thoughts you've been sharing, the photographs you've been sharing. And also, just before we sign off, a little reminder. If you're not a subscriber to the B&H Photography Podcast, head over to whatever platform floats your boat and sign up. It's a great party, and you can be part of it. For now, on behalf of Jason, John, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today.